Now, I've just started that webinar so people can start arriving. I haven't actually seen the attendee numbers today, but I get the feeling from the types of people who've been emailing me that we should actually have quite a good attendance tonight. So quite a number of established scientists seem to be quite interested in this webinar as well, which is entirely unsurprising. I mean, what was I, 36 when I started my first company? So...
Amazing.
I was 21 when I started my first that made a lot of money. Most recent one was a bit more successful, which is great. It's all about the process sometimes and what you learn and who you meet.
My first one worked out perfectly nicely. I was living in Canada and I started a business and I sent one email to 20 Australian contacts saying I'm in business, and that was all the work I could handle. Just what went from there and the word of mouth from one email.
But yeah, sometimes that is the thing though. If you've got the contacts, you've built the network and people are interested in what you're doing, that's sometimes where you get your first start. Yeah.
And it was a beautiful little business. I was a think tank. So companies in Australia would email me, say at the close of business Australian time, and say, I need an answer to this. I'd do a day of research and email them, and it would be waiting for them 9 o'clock in the morning when they turned up for work. You know, it was just a really good little system. And I couldn't believe people paid me to lie on the lounge and read.
Hit the jackpot.
Yeah, it was a good little business. I only dropped it because when I came back to Australia, somebody offered me a job that I just couldn't refuse. So.
Sometimes that's okay though. I think quite often we can get in the habit of profiling the unicorns, and they're fantastic. We love them. They contribute to the economy and innovations in a lot of ways, but it's just as important, if not more, to profile those that are just a few steps ahead of us. It's a bit more achievable. It's much more relatable. So we don't need to we're almost making entrepreneurs celebrities these days, putting them on this pedestal of, aspirational instead of achievable. I think we just need to make it a bit more accessible for more people.
Well, this company has been 8 years that I'm running now, and I may be on the cusp of my first really big win. So I like to say that after 25 years of work, I could be an overnight success.
Yeah, I was actually having the same discussion with a partner of ours in the US. We've just recently launched a new clinic. We've got a range of clinics in Australia, and the one that we've just opened, it has everything the way that we wanted it. It's branded the way that we wanted. It was designed by proper interior designers. It's in the location we always wanted, and it looks exactly how we pictured it would be when we first started out 10 years ago. So we didn't have the funding, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the contacts, we didn't have anything, started up from scratch, and we've had to do all of the hard work and go through the process of building a business. And finally, after 10 years, we now have the clinic that we imagined, but it's taken all that time and effort to get to where we needed to be. And for everyone, it feels like, it is just like an overnight success. But it took 10 years and a lot of hard work to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, we've got only 8 people in so far, but and I would expect a lot more. I'll give it a couple more minutes before we launch. Emma, just because I've only ever read your surname, do I just pronounce it Earley?
Early in the morning.
Right, no worries. Just wanted to make sure. Actually, you know what I haven't done is I haven't changed my name here. Hang on.
There we go.
So, yeah, so Emma, I hope this becomes the start of a longer acquaintance. Michelle and I have known each other for a while. Yeah, there we go. Pam has just emailed me to say that there's 25 people expected tonight. So I'll give them a couple more minutes. Because, we have this whole program of career stuff that we do. We have an event every Thursday night. It's all free, and we just want to help as many people as we can. So.
Sounds like we're aligned there. Not every Thursday night on our end.
Well, I've got to say, it turned out this is the first year where we've done a weekly event. Last year it was monthly. or monthly plus a little bit ad hoc. Turns out weekly is quite a challenge.
Yeah, and was it started last year because of COVID?
Well, I've been running mentoring for 8 years now, but a lot of it went online because of COVID, and then it sort of grew. Things grew from there. You know, particularly we started focusing a lot on online networking. So the first Thursday of every month is what we call Camaraderie, online networking for chemists.
Love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish I could lay claim to the name, but I can't. That was out of a very clever person in the WA branch. So, you know, yeah, but we have webinars, networking. There's a podcast now. We do what we call Careers Hack, which is for active job seekers. We link them with professional recruiters to form a job search strategy individually. We do an Ask Me Anything event. I'm very much hoping to get Attila Bruns at one of our future Ask Me Anythings. We also collaborate with Young Chemist Group and Early Career Chemist Groups around Australia. So, and bit by bit, we're trying to form relationships with every university that has a science faculty in Australia. There are 43 universities in Australia, but not all of them have a science faculty.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think you will continue with digital only, or will you transition to sort of hybrid in-person digital events?
There'll always be a hybrid. We're just waiting for COVID to pass well enough for that. Anyway, we seem to have leveled off at 10, so let's just kick off, because what the heck. Okay, now if you'll forgive me, I have a little spiel that I read at the beginning. So here we go. Hi everyone, you're listening to a career advice webinar by the Royal Australian Chemical Institute, the professional association for chemists in Australia. I'm Dave Sammut, coordinator of the RACI mentoring program and founder and principal of DCS Technical and Loop Hydrometallurgy. In this week's webinar, we're talking about being entrepreneurial in your career and why it's important even when you don't necessarily have aspirations to start your own business in the future. Why understanding the business can work for you and can boost your professional development and increase your job satisfaction. In this webinar, our panel of experts will discuss how to adopt the mindset of an entrepreneur and build confidence and passion to go after the career that you want. Before we start this evening's career panel session, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting all around Australia. We recognise the elders, past, present and emerging, and recognise their contributions as Australia's first scientists and engineers, building a healthy and safe community, what they've done and what we can still learn from their ways. We also like to thank our sponsors for RACI's Career Development Program, DCS Technical, Envirolab and Laboratory Credit Union. So I'd like to introduce our panelists and thank you for joining us this evening. Emma Earley, Operations Manager at UTS Startups, and Michelle Morris, Director and Chief Innovation Officer at ScholyCare. I would say that we were also supposed to be joined by Gary Jones, founder and CEO of Fledge Innovations Laboratory, which supports biotech and medtech startups. Unfortunately, Gary had a family emergency and couldn't make it tonight, but I do encourage you to look into Fledge if you have an interest in that side of things. Okay, so remembering that, of course, you are welcome to ask questions at any point via the Q&A. Let's kick off. So, Michelle, why don't you tell us about yourself in a couple of minutes and what you do?
Currently, I'm one of the directors of ScholyCare. We're a company that's focused on scoliosis treatment and providing that to not just patients in Australia, but now all around the world. So it's something that my husband, who's the other director of the company, he has an absolute passion for is spinal treatment, spinal rehabilitation. Non-surgical is his background, but definitely doing the rehabilitation of conditions such as scoliosis. So our company has several now clinics around Australia, and we developed some technology for 3D scanning of the spine, of the torso, so we can create custom braces that are designed with the latest CAD/CAM software, get those braces all custom made and manufactured in the US and then shipped out to wherever our providers are. So it's something that's grown from a passion for a very niche type of treatment and type of condition, and something we've been able to capture. There was nothing else there at the time, and has just grown to, I think we've got about 5 clinics now, and about 200 providers worldwide, and we're about to franchise our brand in the US, all being well. COVID has definitely set us back a few months, if not a year or so, but it hasn't slowed the business itself, because we were able to be a little bit, dynamic and agile, and move things online, and go with online learning, and sort of still get our products out to people who needed it. So my role within the company is not the medical, not the clinical. My background has always been information technology and computers. That's what I studied at University of Sydney. I've always had a keen interest in starting my own business, running my own business, creating something that wasn't there, and being in charge of whatever destiny I had, and not just, although I worked for several companies leading up to where I am now, I've always wanted to be sort of steering the ship. So it sort of complements very well my background in IT, a little bit of business, a little bit of marketing that I've picked up along the way, and then the other director, my husband, is the clinical and the sales, the front end, the personality, sort of being out the front and setting everything up, and that's worked really well for us, got us to this point.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Emma?
Thanks for having me. So I am the operations manager at UTS Startups, and we're a program and community to inspire as many people as possible to become entrepreneurs and to support them along their journey, no matter what stage they're at. At the moment, we have over 350 technology-enabled startups in our community. And what's exciting is that represents all faculties. So not just the sort of that typical, the archetype of the entrepreneur. There's a bit of something for everyone. So my job is to really support our team to make sure, we've got everything that we need to continue growing, finding some opportunities and funding, as we're always looking for, whether it's in or out of an organisation. But before this, I was a co-founder of Swell and Solace, which was an ethical children's wear label. And I was sort of the front side of the business, unlike Michelle, whereas my business partner was more of the product designer. And we grew that business to 15 stockists in 5 countries, and had a lot of fun doing it. But I fell into entrepreneurship. Wasn't a direct path for me. I fell into it because I didn't really know what I was doing with my life and my career. Not dissimilar to a lot of people, but I think there is a misconception that everyone has, the exact focus on what they want to be, and they know they want to be an entrepreneur and exactly what they want to do. That wasn't me. I actually started studying medical radiation science. Loved it, but it wasn't quite right for me. And then I finished my law degree at UTS. Also didn't want to practice, and found that entrepreneurship was that nice middle ground of using all of the skills that I'd learned along the way, but whilst being able to be creative and build my own products.
Oh, thank you very much. And look, I completely agree with you. Michelle, I'm surprised you're saying I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My father was self-employed. I watched us struggle through feast and famine all through my childhood, and I was absolutely determined that I was not going to run my own business. Yet here I am 8 years later.
Well, I think both my parents, my dad was a sole trader, and my mum, she was a pharmacist, and she ran her own pharmacy. So I definitely grew up with seeing them, struggle, and I think that work hard. It's like the work ethic. You get up when you need to get up. You do what you need to do. You put in the hours you need to do to get the job done. And I know people who work for a company quite often do the same. But it's something I saw the rewards of them doing it for themselves. And to see what they could achieve for themselves. I think that went a long way in inspiring me to actually want to do the same. Yeah.
Oh, it's well done. I've got to say, probably my moment, and Emma, I think it'd be an interesting one just to touch on early in the piece, is what was your moment when you said I wanted to be an entrepreneur? And for me, it was working for a company thinking, watching the way it was managed and thinking, I could do better than that.
That's a great point, and I wouldn't necessarily pinpoint that as the catalyst. However, in hindsight, maybe it was, and I just didn't realize. I think when you start your own business, or even if you move into a leadership role in your organization, it's very easy to think about what I don't want to do and what I don't want to be or replicate, because you've had bad experiences or you've been burned or disappointed and you wanted to do something else. But I think when I realized I wanted to become an entrepreneur, it was actually when I was doing an internship at Fishburners, which at the time was the first and only co-working space for tech startups in Sydney. And it was the first time that I really experienced a community of people really marching to the beat of their own drum, not necessarily following the rules, just giving something a crack, testing something out, seeing what works and figuring out why and how to grow things. But also I was expecting it to be a bit more of a competitive environment, and it was super supportive. So I just thought, how can I wake up and feel that every day and be part of that every day? So it was back in uni when I sort of thought, yeah, I don't quite know what it is yet, but that's how I want to spend my life and how I want to spend most of my time during the week.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, well then the general question, and I'll stick with you, Emma. Entrepreneurship, the word means lots of different things to lots of different people. What does it mean to you?
It's a hard one to define, and I think at its core it is working on what you choose to work on, how you choose to work on it. I don't think we need to get much more complex than that. You can get more technical in the definition, but it really is that. Sure, you can do that within an organization, but I think there are fewer boundaries when you're an entrepreneur and you're doing it for yourself. With that comes greater risk, but that's part of the excitement.
Although let's not run down doing it within an organization. This is one of the points that I do want to make sure that we get across to people tonight is you don't have to start a startup to be entrepreneurial, right? You can build a heck of a career just with the mindset, right? Michelle?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Emma though. I see your point that you can do it within an organization. For me, it does resonate that it's something you are taking control of your own career, your own destiny, your own business, and creating something. In a business organization where you're working for somebody else, I think you would have to very carefully position yourself and your ideas, because you'd probably be working with an entrepreneur who's already established there running the company. So provided you could foster a great relationship with them, take on a role that was creative, whether it was in product design or whether it was in something that you were helping steer the business, and you had the buy-in of the owners or the directors or the managers, and they knew that that's what you were passionate about doing, I think you could do it. But I have seen a situation where my partner, who is very entrepreneurial, tried to do that within a business that he was working for and did not have the buy-in with the owner. And hence that's where he sort of moved away and started his own entrepreneurship, and the two of us together were able to do that. So I definitely believe you can do it within somebody else's company, and I think you need to get a solid buy-in and make sure they're on board with what you want to do and develop.
Oh, look, I absolutely agree with that aspect. I can't imagine ever going back and working for someone else again. I'll like
Yeah, I think that the two of us are at this point very unemployable.
Yeah, look,
okay.
At the end of the day, for me, it's my choice, but it's my responsibility. It's a two-sided coin.
Yes.
But is it weird to say I like the responsibility? I like feeling the ownership of the outcome.
Yeah, you are completely in charge of the results, and you get back what you put in. You get to dictate your hours. So I always say, I can choose my own hours, and unfortunately I choose to work all of them now. So there's a lot of commitment to it, and quite a bit of sacrifice. But I think, so long as you can maintain a bit of balance in your life, the rewards are definitely there.
Yeah, well, I mean, if, in terms of working, you get to choose which 7 days a week you work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Now, so I will just quickly, since we're talking about entrepreneurship, Gary, who is going to be with us tonight, he has another term for when you're doing it within your company. He calls it entrepreneurship, and I think we'll touch on that a little bit further into the discussion. So sticking with you, Michelle, what was the driving force? What was the critical point that made you decide, now it's time to start my own business?
I think looking back, because I thought about this before coming on as a panelist, and even as far back as primary school, I remember my mum had the pharmacy, and she would get in little knickknacks, little gifts, and little things that were all the rage with the kids, and hairbands was one of them, like really funky little things you put in your hair. And I took a whole bunch of them to school one day and sold them to my friends. And I thought, and they all bought them. And I came home with all these, it's like $1 each. I came home like, this is great. Like, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. Like, where can I get more of these and sell more of these? And what other schools can I go to? And just that sort of the success of having something, a product that people wanted to buy. It was a thrill. And then I learned the hard lesson of my mum said, well, they cost me money, so I'm going to need you to pay me back. So it was a very early lesson on how that business aspect of it all actually worked.
Did you turn a profit?
Sorry, I did. Well, I think I was helped, given a good deal from my mum. But then in high school, up in one of the Westfield shopping centres, there was a machine that spat out business cards. You punched in what you wanted your business card to be, and it gave you a business card. And I knew a lot of my friends and family were starting up with computers, and that was my skill, and my passion was computers. And so I went up there, created my own business cards, put my name, my number, my hourly rate, and a picture of a computer and a fix-it thing, and was giving them out and getting people to call me to get them trained on how to use their brand new computer, which was again all the rage back then. But I think all the way along I've wanted to do that. The big one for this business here, we'd come back from living in the UK after the global financial crisis, and had one of those moments of, do we go back into working for another company, or do we, start out and create our own company, create our own business, sell our own products. And it was a big moment, big decision. But we knew from working for ourselves previously, the type of reward and the freedom, the flexibility that brings, and just being passionate about what we wanted to do. It almost became an easy decision. And then just that started, literally, it's been a 10-year journey to get to where we are now, but absolutely the right decision at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Michelle, that's music to my ears that you really started in primary school. I'm trying not to indoctrinate my niece and support her to do whatever she wants. Last week, she said she wants to be a scientist and an astronaut. So that makes me proud. We need more women in STEM. Yes. But, over the Christmas holidays, so she turned 7 in January, and she decided to set up a stall at the caravan park, selling bookmarks for $2. And then she got sick of designing them, so she sold pieces of cardboard for design your own custom bookmarks. Quick pivot, it was great. And then they even, without any of the adults telling them what to do, they realized that near the toilet block there was greater traffic, so they picked up their little stall and moved over where the customers were.
Yeah. She's a natural. Yeah, it does. It's something that you just want to do sometimes. Yeah.
Now, you must see a lot of this, Emma, at UTS startups. It's very interesting, because I would think that a lot of people early in their career, or even as students, would not necessarily be thinking about entrepreneurship yet. Mm-hmm. But tell me about your experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. You enroll in university to get a degree in that course. you don't necessarily, for most people, go to university to start your own venture. You know, there are lots of exceptions. We've got some great courses in creative intelligence and innovation, diploma of innovation, even a business degree, or an executive MBA in entrepreneurship. So there are people that come to university knowing that that's their path, and that's fantastic. That's our low-hanging fruit. We want to try to inspire and support entrepreneurship at scale. And so part of what we do is just letting people see the opportunities that entrepreneurship brings. And for a lot of people, it's really just about dipping your toe in the water to build skills to become a more employable graduate. And that's great. We love that. If that's your only touch point in entrepreneurship, job done. But we'd like to go a little bit further and try to get people to really flex their muscles, because, you know, it's a skill to be learned. It's a muscle to be built and flexed and used. I don't think you can be an entrepreneur in theory. You have to go out and do the thing, build the thing, sell the thing. But what I love is that there's not a single faculty or school that's not represented. And, you know, sometimes it is a direct correlation between what someone is studying. For example, the team at Maslow, they've created a voice-enabled app for patients who have had a stroke and need to work with their carers at home on rehabilitation. And one of them is an occupational therapist, another is a designer, another is a marketer. So that's a bit more of a clear link. Whereas we have a civil engineering student, I'm not sure if it's civil or mechanical, but she is working on a startup that 3D prints breast prostheses for women who've had mastectomies due to breast cancer. Completely different to what she's studying, and she had to learn CAD software and how to 3D print. So it's just so exciting seeing the diversity of ideas coming through and seeing what sparks ideas and what opportunities people find, and what really, you know, hits them in the gut as their why. What do I want to, you know, what impact do I want to have in the world? And there's a bit of everything in our community.
Presumably you also see a number of PhD students who want to take their ideas to the world.
Yeah, for sure we do. HDR students do make up more of a minority in our community. There are some reasons for that. You know, if you are doing your PhD within a university context, there are some intellectual property restrictions in how you commercialize it. But we do have some PhD candidates and graduates who have taken what they've learned and throughout that journey found a different gap that's not necessarily on the exact track of their PhD that they can commercialize in an atypical way, like through a startup. So yeah, absolutely. Undergrad, postgrad, bit of everything.
Excellent. Now, on a related question that's come in from the floor, running a business needs all kinds of skills, and how. One way is to hire different people with different skills, but that's costly. One person with multiple skills is ideal. How would you hire or train such a talent? Does the owner need to be multi-skilled too? It's a multi-part question. I might start with you, Michelle. You know, you started your company. You come to realize how many different skills are required.
Yeah, it's a lot. And when you start off and things are small, it's sort of enough that you can handle yourself sometimes. I think it really helped that it wasn't just in this particular venture, it wasn't just me alone. And I had a partner, my husband, and like I said, he has the clinical and the sales and the networking and the front of house type of personality. And my background was the more the business side, the marketing side, the make sure that, you know, the tax was done, and you know, the websites were up and the regulations were right, and you know, get the Google AdWords up and use technology, and the 3D scanning technology that we made was you know, stuff that I had started to work with another company. So sometimes finding a partner, whether it's a spouse or whether it's somebody you can work with, to start that company with you and fill the skill gap that you don't have, and bring them along that journey with you. So sometimes, yeah, you do need You need good partners, and they need to be on board with you. It does really help if it's a spouse, but I also wouldn't recommend working with a spouse all the time. That's an interesting challenge in itself. But yeah, I think the first thing, it is very costly getting good people. So if you don't have a lot of investment and you don't have a lot of backing to start with, and it's all you, you're going to need to find people that you can work with and bring along that journey, starting that company, starting that business with you. And obviously, you know, they have that share in the business, and they have that commitment as well to see it succeed, and they grow it with you. We're at a point now where we have now started hiring operations managers and learning managers and filling those skill gaps. We've peaked out at where I can, you know, bring my skills to, and we need experts. So as the business grows and as you need to go and level up, you need to find the right people, and hopefully you've had small successes along the way with the team that you've got in place, that you can then start to resource those effectively. And sometimes that means, you know, taking a loan, or sometimes it means getting investment, but you do need to fill those skills yourself. So I would say, yes, start with people that can fill the skill gap that you don't have, and bring them along that journey with you until you can afford to find the experts and pay them to bring their skills to your company.
That's such a great point, Michelle. And I think as well, you know, you touched on it there, depending on what stage you're at, your needs change. I think the earlier you start up, the more generalists you probably need, that don't care what their job description says per se, and they can just get in, figure things out, take initiative and fix things.
Yeah.
But then as you start to scale, the need for specialists really does creep in there. But to the person who answered the question, you know, in my own business experience, because I'm a generalist, and also, you know, when cash flow is a struggle, you kind of think, I need these extra people to help, but I can physically do it, so I'll just do it. And I probably, in hindsight, should have been more disciplined to outsource the jobs that, sure, I could have physically done them, but my time was more valuable spent in other ways. And perhaps if you are in that earlier stage and you're not quite ready to hire a part-time or full-time person, you can start by contracting out specific jobs. And that really takes the load, both physically and mentally, away from you, so you can focus on the more important aspects of your business.
Absolutely, Emma.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'm the same. I'm a generalist that can get in and learn systems, do things. You ask me, like, I'll be told, get that done, not a problem. And you get to a point where you're not doing a great job at it. You're getting by and it's getting done. Someone else who is really specialized in that could have done it better, but you've done it. And then in the end, you get all of these generalist jobs and you can't do them all yourself to a standard that you want in your company. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to find you know, Upwork and outsource jobs and contractors and people, and to dedicate your time to actually being the entrepreneur, being the director, making the high level decisions, and not getting bogged down in the everyday stuff. You're right, it takes a discipline to do.
It does take discipline, and it's a really important point to recognize what Emma said about, yes, I could do it, but my time is worth more than it's going to cost me to get it done. I certainly know the first one I outsourced was bookkeeping, because I was spending hours and hours and hours bookkeeping when I could just get it done. You know, I could make more money doing what I do than I could by trying to do what somebody else does.
I think that was second. Mine was answering the phones, because I was doing that, and then bookkeeping, because that does take so much time when you start paying wages and you start needing to do tax returns and BASs, and you need to get that outsourced rapid.
I think the other point that's worth making here,
I should have outsourced, but I didn't.
You didn't?
Bookkeeping is the first one that I should have outsourced, but I didn't, and it's just so time consuming if that's not your specialty.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that there are federal, state and regional chambers of commerce, business support groups. There is a lot of free assistance that the government will give you in terms of advisory and other skills that will support your business, or that the government will co-fund to support your business when you're a startup. So, you know, there's a lot of resources. You can go federally, it's Oz Industry, but there's state and regional in every state. So, so that's probably that question answered. Okay. What about the mindset of a business owner, entrepreneur sets them apart from your typical professional? Emma, do you want to start there? What is it about their mindset?
In a way, calling someone a business owner sets them apart from an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur quite often can own their own business, but almost just referring to yourself as a business owner, you're kind of just putting a box around what you can achieve and what your role is in that organization. But I mean, you know, we're sort of, this is a semantical thing. And even just when we talk about the difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur, and some people refer to an entrepreneurial mindset, whereas I can see why, you know, there's a distinction between an entrepreneur working on your own venture and an intrapreneur doing so within someone else's organization. But I don't think personally there's such thing as an entrepreneurial mindset, because I think they're both entrepreneurial mindsets, you're just in a different system. And I think if you refer to yourself, you know, everyone's different, but for me, I think if you refer to yourself as an intrapreneur, you're almost clipping your own wings before you get to do anything. Sure, some organizations are less supportive than others, and it's like any role, it's like any company. You need to find something that aligns with your values, not just in terms of why you're doing things, but how you're enabled to do your best. I'm lucky that I happen to be working in an organisation where, you know, it helps that we are the innovation and entrepreneurship unit, but we are really given a lot of freedom and empowerment to treat what we do like its own startup. Sure, there are some boundaries there, but it's kind of the closest thing to having our own thing. With a little bit more of a safety net, and that's a great way to go about things. So I think from a mindset perspective, it's the same thing. The things that make it different are actually beyond your control, whereas your mindset is completely within your control.
Absolutely. Michelle, are there any characteristics of an entrepreneur?
Yeah, for me, it's that real self-belief that you can take on that role of starting something yourself, that you're not reliant, at least to start with, on a business that exists, that you can be that business, that you can create something. So you've got to, when I say creative, it's not like in an artistic sort of way, but you want to actually create something that hasn't been done before, or a business that hasn't existed before. So you have that drive to, you know, start it and create it and be responsible for it. And you do have some level of, you know, ability to take risks. That I've worked with a lot of people who are completely risk adverse, and for me, I've found it hard to understand that, you know, where they've been coming from. I'm like, no, we'll just do it. We'll just, you know, give it a go. And they're like, but what if it doesn't work? And it's like, that's okay. So you have to be somebody who, yeah, is prepared to take risks and prepared to accept failure. And realize that that's a possibility, and that's not a deterrent for you. So you know, most entrepreneurs that I know have tried and failed, sometimes multiple times, and I know myself I have. Within the business that we're in at the moment, we've tried small ventures that have failed, that we've, you know, wound up because, you know, they're making $0 or they're costing us money, or it just hasn't worked out. I've started you know, businesses that have completely gone bust, and that's always a possibility. And you just have to still maintain that you've got that appetite for risk. You've got to have that self-belief that, you know, these things will pay off, and the hard work and the perseverance and the time you put into it, there is a reward at the end at some of them. But yeah, there's a lot of people who I know will never get to that point where they're entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial, because they're risk averse, and they're not ready to take a jump like that because of fear of failure, or yeah, they just can't wrap their head around that part of it.
You're absolutely right. And it's always worth bearing in mind the consequences of failure. You know, often those consequences are a lot less than you might think. You know, if you are an entrepreneur at the beginning of your career and you fail, so what? You know, it's not as if you've got a mortgage and a kid and a whatnot. You know, being young is a great time to make mistakes. Just don't get a tattoo.
Or do, that's fine. But yeah, and that's something I would solidly recommend if you are young and you don't have big mortgages and responsibilities, and you do feel like that you could create something, you could start a business, you want to go down the road of being entrepreneurial. Do it now, do it sooner than later, because yeah, you can start another business if one fails. You can work for somebody else if you need to pick back up and need to get back in the industry. You'll find things that you realize you missed out on, the lessons that you learned. You can go back and learn at a university or at a course, and you won't know what you don't know until you've actually made those mistakes sometimes.
Yeah, I actually find personally. Sorry, Emma.
I was just going to add, I very much agree with that. And sure, your risk appetite might be greater the earlier you are in your career. But I would add, it doesn't matter whether you're in your 20s or your 30s, your 50s, 60s or 70s. It doesn't matter if you've got a mortgage and you've got kids. That will affect how you calculate risk and some of the decisions you might take, but that shouldn't stop you.
True.
You know, it's never too late. There's no right time to start. Like when you start is the right time.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
That is true.
Yeah. I actually thought about this question a little bit, which I don't normally do, but it seems to me that, because as I said, I had never intended to be an entrepreneur, but when I look back at the actions that I took in my early career, they are indicative of the same things that have led to success as an entrepreneur. And that is thinking about the job that I did, its context, how did it fit into the business? How was the business making money off what I did? How could I learn the skills around me and generalize my skills? All of those things very much set me up to be an entrepreneur later on, even though it was never my intent. And of course, people who know me know that I give a long and boring spiel about the power of the word yes, that it is the single most powerful word in our career language. So, okay. How necessary is a business degree to successful entrepreneurship?
I don't think any particular course of study is necessary for entrepreneurship, because I don't think there's one way or one right way. There's so many pathways into entrepreneurship and even more pathways through it. So you can be at the top of your class in a business degree, be a terrible entrepreneur. I would like to think I'm a halfway decent entrepreneur, or at least have potential to be, and I studied law. What I learned from my law degree has held me in good stead for my own business, because, specific technical things like intellectual property law and corporations law, that was very useful. That, had I not had that degree, I probably just would have Googled it and asked people for advice and spoken to experts. So there's so many different ways to approach it and so many workarounds. That's not to say you shouldn't, go to university if that's right for you. And if that is something that fills you with passion, absolutely go and do it. But I don't think anyone should really do anything because they think they have to. And I think a lot of people can fall into that trap quite easily.
I completely agree. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm the same. Well, I don't have a business degree, and even though I had an early passion for wanting to start businesses, I never even thought about going down that road and studying it. I think it's important to understand how businesses work, getting experience working in other people's businesses, and in the field that you have a passion for and that you have an interest in, and see how things run and pay attention to how to be successful, what's working for the companies that you work for, what doesn't work, what are their successes, what are their failures, learn along the way, and take note of that, and understand the industry that you're working in. But yeah, certainly I think going back now, there's certain parts of business I'd like to go back and do some study on, just to get better at those particular areas of running a business. But that sort of comes to you later on if it's something you're interested in doing, and you haven't found that particular expert to come and fill that gap for you, and you want to specialize in working in that particular part of your business. But yeah, not a necessary thing, I don't think. I think you just have to have a passion for something, and use that passion, that skill, and grow something yourself.
Can I add though, when it comes to universities, sure, you can replicate it in other settings, but part of my, a significant part of my current network was, I met them through someone I met at university. So it's not just about the pure theory and application of that you learn in universities. It is much more broad experiences, including networking. But you can go about that in other ways if you choose not to go down the tertiary education path, and that's fantastic. But I think that's quite unique to a university context as well. The networks that you can create and build, they'll last throughout your whole life.
Absolutely. Okay, so what's the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur? Michelle, do you want to jump in?
For me, it is like we talked about, delegating. When you are a generalist, letting go of certain parts of your business, you feel like no one does the job as well as you. You're nodding your heads. Yeah, no one can do this as well as I can do, even if that's not completely true. And it's almost, it would take me more time to tell somebody or teach somebody how to do this one, just to do it myself. And letting go of that and trusting other people, and delegating those responsibilities and finding the right people to assign those tasks to, is a real big personal challenge.
Yeah.
For me too, on that same vein, working with staff. If you grow a successful business, you will need to employ people, and you will need to build relationships. You will need to be a type of human resources. Until you can afford to have a human resources person, you are HR. And you need to be able to understand that those people are coming in and they're working in your company, and that how to manage them. And you realize that everybody is different. That was very strange for me, because I've quite often worked by myself and not in a growing company of multiple personalities, and having to balance all of those and pay attention to all of those and make sure they're all looked after. And then selecting the right people who shared the same values and the same, wanted to be on board with your core values. So yeah, choosing the right staff, getting the right people to work with your company, and then trusting them to do the job that you hire them to do. For me, that HR and delegation part for me is the hardest part.
Yeah, you talked about delegation. My heart started hurt. Emma?
I mean, I don't disagree. I think as you were talking then, I just jotted 3 things down. Top one was co-founder relationships. I don't know how many people in my life over the past, 15 years have said, don't work with your family. My previous business, my co-founder was my sister. The one that I'm currently working on, because I'm getting itchy feet, is with my partner. So those are some complex relationships to manage. And it's, sometimes easier to work with someone that you don't have a very close personal relationship with, because you can handle it with your business brain on. Not saying that you need to completely throw caution to the wind when it comes to relationships and how you treat other people, but there are decisions that you make because you don't want to lose a relationship at the expense of your business or at the expense of money. So it does change the frame or the lens through which you see things and make decisions. But in saying that, in other ways, it's so much better because we can be more direct with each other. You don't need all of that extra fluffy language and coddling each other to get from point A to point B. So I think it's definitely been a challenging thing, co-founder relationships and building a team, and trusting that you've hired the right people. And I think with that, ultimately it's about hiring slowly. Find the right people, not out of desperation or the first CV that comes in your inbox. The other thing, we've touched on this a few times, it's being disciplined enough, and I'm not saying that I've achieved this, but being disciplined enough to not fall into that hustle and grind culture, because you will be better as a human, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, if you look after yourself. And I'm not just saying whack on a mud mask and have a bath and that's your self-care ticked off for the month, but about really being disciplined about looking after yourself as a whole person, and trying to close that laptop at a reasonable time so that you've got other things in your life, which is challenging because your startup, you know, it's your baby. And quite often it's part of your identity. And I think that's kind of what leads me into my third thing that I've found the most challenging. It is not necessarily compartmentalizing me as a startup founder from the successes and failures in my business, because it really is part of my identity. So when you hear no, having that resilience to say, that doesn't mean I'm a failure. That doesn't mean my self-worth is lower. Again, not saying I've necessarily succeeded at this, but it's something that you constantly work through, because if I'm working for an organization, I can shamelessly sell, promote anything. I found over, you know, earlier in my entrepreneurial journey, I found that when I was selling my own products, suddenly I became timid. Why couldn't I push through this self-doubt? And why did I question the quality and the value that I was providing just because it was my own business? So I think part of your own self-doubt, and, you know, everyone's different, of course, and some people won't have any issues with this, but it's something that over the years I've had to consciously and actively move through, so that didn't hold me back in business, and learn when to draw the line of, no, that's not me. You know, even if you just have to pretend you're the sales manager as opposed to I'm the co-founder, you know?
Yeah, everything. I'm completely agreeing there. I've recently stopped working 7 days a week, and I'm having to relearn to take. I mean, even then, I still only work 6 days a week, but I'm having to relearn having a day off.
Yeah, it's something we know that we need to do, and every January where it's like, okay, so Thursdays, that's our day off. We're out of the office, the laptops are off, the computers, everything, the phones, don't take any calls. We've done that now for the last, I think, 3 years, and have been unsuccessful at having a day off during the week. It's just we still manage to do the ad hoc thing. We're like, okay, we do have a chance for a breather. It is going to happen, and we take the time away from the office. But yeah, trying to build that in, trying to spend time, you know, for yourself, and keep up your connections with friends and family, because the business can become all consuming, and with technology and the 24/7, and we've got partners overseas, clients and suppliers, it is around the clock type of thing, and you do have to at some point say, no, this day is for me. I need life admin. I need to focus on other people that are outside of the business and maintain relationships outside of the business. And Emma, like you said, the co-founder thing, I've been now working with my partner not just the 10 years in this business, but probably another 5-ish before that, and it has its pros and cons. And just like being an entrepreneur has its pros and cons, you have flexibility and you have freedom. At the same time, you have commitment and sacrifice. And with the co-founder being a partner, a spouse, it's the same thing. You have access to them all the time. You can bounce ideas off each other. You talk about things over dinner, but at the same time, you do have that challenge of the relationships when things go poorly, or you do have a difference of opinion, how you navigate that. Yeah, it is tricky.
Can I add though that, you know, I've heard you both say, I failed at this, you know, I haven't achieved this yet when it comes to that work-life balance. But maybe, you know, let's not forget to celebrate the small wins. You've moved down to 6 days. What a great win. That dinner, you didn't talk about the business for 10 minutes. That's a win. It's just about little building blocks. It's not about you know, completely changing everything overnight. And that's totally okay. Little baby steps lead to big steps.
Yeah, and I think taking a step back as well and looking and saying, okay, yeah, sure, we work 6-7 days a week, but we are able to, you know, back before COVID, get on a plane, go to a conference in the US, take a side trip, you know, somewhere else, because we, you know, we were running that company, we were doing that business, we were networking with people, and we had the freedom, flexibility to do that. You know, sure, we're not working 9 to 5, 5 days a week, and can spend time on ourselves regularly, but you know, you are able to access those things, and should, you know, definitely acknowledge those when they happen.
Yeah. Look, my tactic, I'm very analytical, and I actually keep a timesheet of everything I do. And in 2016, I worked 3,400 hours in the year. So roughly 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so I drew a line on my chart and I said, I am not allowed to work more than 2,200 hours in a year.
How you going with that?
Well, that's a little bit less. That's about 180 hours a month, and I sit about 220 hours a month. So I haven't quite got there, but
Cool.
What I'm hearing is that you'll be most improved.
It is those baby steps, Emma. It's just
yeah.
small.
But there's an old mantra: what gets measured gets attended to, and so that's how I deal with these things. I measure them. So.
You know, this is how I stopped working after dinner. Well, not stopped. I reduced significantly working after dinner, and I ate late. I read, what's it called? Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's one of those books, I don't know if you've read it, but it's one of those ones that comes around every few years and completely changes everything. So I started habit tracking. Little things like, I don't drink enough water. So I habit bundled. So while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil to make my coffee, I make sure I drink a glass of water. And then I can tick this off my habit tracker. And then I add up every month how many times I had my glass of water at the start of the day and throughout the rest of the day for that whole month. And I like numbers and data as well. So I can look and see what I was more successful or what I failed at that month. But it was a tiny little thing. Now I'm actually drinking 2 liters of water a day, but it started with drinking 1 glass of water while I wait for my kettle to boil. And I think that can be applicable to every part of your life and every part of your business as well. We all have big blue sky goals and dreams, but it's not a giant leap to get there. It's a series of steps.
Absolutely.
Bite-sized chunks, and don't be so hard on yourself. You're not exactly where you want to be in terms of work-life balance, but you'll get there.
I will get there. My goal, by the way, is 4 days a week.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
And then down to 4 hours a week.
Yeah, then you really have to be good at delegating once you're down.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but see, it took 8 years, but I finally got to the point there is a person to do every job at my company. So over the summer, my father got very ill and passed away. I was able to take 3 months off and the business carried on without me because we'd finally got to that point. So, yeah, so it took a long time, but yeah, we're getting there. Okay, we're virtually out of time. Michelle, there's been a question from the audience. How did you know when you were ready to grow beyond a single clinic? You know, what conversation with your business partners? Were there any metrics you used to decide about expansion?
So yeah, my partner and I are not very analytical. It's a very kind of gut feel thing that when we first brought on our operations manager, she was horrified with the fact we had no budget. We did have a business plan. So the thing that we are good at is due diligence in terms of this is the idea that we have. Let's research into it. So we'll do research. We'll go through pros and cons. We'll work out, you know, is this a good idea based on all the data that we can, you know, research on that particular thing. But then, you know, the metrics and how that's all performing is not great for us. But it was more of a feel. So the first clinic, it started in Sydney. When we came back from the UK, And we worked with a friend of ours, an associate out of his clinic, and grew that through Google AdWords, through websites, through doing education seminars for other health professionals on scoliosis, because most people hadn't heard of it or didn't quite know how to treat it, or were just doing their best. So we sort of grew from a single room to our own clinic, and then the clinic in Sydney was quite successful. But because of the advertising that we were doing, and mostly through Google AdWords and websites and a bit of Facebook, a bit of word of mouth, and these seminars we were running, we started getting inquiries from outside of Sydney, and from Melbourne, from Queensland, from New Zealand. And because it was such a niche business, we had something that people couldn't access anywhere else. So the second clinic that we decided to start up was in Melbourne, because we started getting a lot of inquiries from Melbourne. And again, we followed the same protocol, which was we found a surgeon in Melbourne who was really receptive to the work that we were doing, had seen Jeb present somewhere. He'd gone and watched the surgery happen with this surgeon, built a relationship with him, and then we worked out of his room in Melbourne, grew that, and then started a clinic in Melbourne, just like we had in Sydney. And really, we've been following that same thing, just create the environment, build it up until we can support it 5 days a week. We've done the same recently in Wahroonga, up near the Sydney Adventist Hospital, which is our brand new clinic that we're so thrilled about. And we have fly-in, fly-outs in Brisbane and Adelaide, where we haven't had the ability to grow as much as we'd like, just purely for resourcing. But yeah, it was really more, the demand was there. And every time we went and made the decision to do it, it was a little bit of testing it out, a little bit of toe in the water, and a little bit of, is the market there for this? And can we work with somebody and see if it works, and then start growing and expanding if it's a success. That's pretty much how we've been doing each one of them, plus the 3D bracing and work overseas. Same deal. Start a little bit and grow it as it becomes successful.
Yeah, I will say, Michelle, given that you and I work together on the R&D tax incentive, we did look at opening a Melbourne office, and we landed a big client down in Melbourne that was going to be our anchor, and then give us a reason to grow, to land there and expand. Yes. But the client fell over, and so did our Melbourne office, and I'm glad that happened in the right sequence.
Yes, yeah, sometimes that helps.
Okay, we've got time for the last question, and it's my favourite. What are your key lessons for anyone looking to start their own business? Emma?
Well, my first one is to get in and do something. Stop thinking about it, stop over analysing, get in and talk to a potential customer. Even if it is with pen and paper, wireframe something, put pen to paper, not just thought in your brain. Like, absolutely, you just have to do something. It sounds really maybe stupid and simplistic, but entrepreneurship is not a game of theory. It's a game of action. So that's about it.
Yeah, I'd agree. Like I said, with the business plans that we've written, every step of the way, when we've looked at doing something, we've written it down. What is it we want to achieve? Write it down, save that somewhere, put the date on it, put the objectives that you have, and how you want to get there. And you go back and you look, and you're like, yeah, that's what's happened, because you write it down. If you do not write it down, you do not write down what you want to achieve, it probably won't happen. So yeah, exactly. Write it down, and Emma's right. Do it. Just start doing it. Start that conversation. Start making those plans. It's something. Don't be afraid of the risk. Take that risk. And if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you might fail. You might have to start again. You might have to do it all over again. But if you do have that commitment and you're willing to put the time and the effort in, it's more likely you'll have the successes to go with it.
And in these very early stages, if you're honestly talking your first and second step, you're not spending any money. You've got nothing to lose. This is really just about getting, understanding your customer and understanding your problem space really well so that you can solve it for them or do it better than what exists at the moment. And I think as well, acknowledge the fact that there are so many resources out there available completely for free to teach you how to go about taking these actions. Honestly, Google's your friend. You can literally Google, and I did this when in our business when we were expanding to international markets and I had no idea about wholesaling or the international supply chain. I literally Googled how to sell wholesale and then figured it out. And then next minute we had 5 countries under our belt. So there's a lot of places, not just incubators and accelerators, but other startup supporters and experienced entrepreneurs. They've done the hard work and they've shared their insights. So just go online, Google things, read books, listen to podcasts, soak it all in, but ultimately go out and do it. What have you got to lose?
Look, I completely agree with that. Although I will say I took the extra step of running the numbers. I figured out, what were going to be my monthly costs. What, could I do this? When I started the business, my monthly cost was $500. I could run my business at $500 a month, excluding my own salary. And I figured for $500 a month, I can do this, right? I will say this, and I think this is a really important lesson. I'm sure you would agree here, Michelle. It is not enough to be a profitable company. You have to have cash flow, right? You can go out backwards because you become insolvent because you can't pay the bills when they fall due. So even 8 years into my career, into my company, I still run a 6-week cash flow forecast every Friday night, right?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That's my partner Jeb actually did he did a course, a Harvard business course, because he wanted to get better and understand more about how his business was growing, and it was very focused a little bit on entrepreneurship. And one of the big things that they said is the number one rule is do not run out of cash. Like above anything else, that's you're going to need to understand how your business works, how bills are going to get paid, not let everybody spend all your money for you, and keep the cash flow.
Yeah, and I started my business with $5,000, and it was 5 years into the business before I next had to inject cash for growth.
Amazing.
So, if you plan it, it can be done.
Cash flow is so important, but also, for those that are a little bit further along, because, the more you grow and scale, growth devours cash. We all know that. And you need to be a lot more pragmatic and specific as you grow to certain stages. But in the early days, I almost like to set people a challenge of see how far you can go without spending a single dollar or spending less than $100. You can get no code or low code solutions for pretty much everything. Obviously depends on what your product or service is going to be. You can get a website up for really not much at all. It doesn't need to be a fully, built out platform. You can get a landing page up for $0 except for your time. You can start selling your product or service before you even have a product or service. So I love to set people that challenge of how far can you get without spending any money.
And that's I think that's how we ended up being able to grow as we did with a budget of $0 to start with. We literally had nothing except for our time and our skills. And you can absolutely do it. You're right. You can build a website yourself. And back then there was not the same amount of tools that you can access today. There's so much available out there, not just the resources that you can get for running your own business, but building websites, building online stores. It's all there. And I think it's never been a better time to go down that road.
Oh, hell, my website is still the one I built myself. My logo is still the one I made myself. Because for me,
we just rebranded, we changed our logo, but we said we don't change it too much. We really like the logo. Just make it a little bit prettier. But it's essentially the same thing that we started with. Yeah.
Okay, we've got one more question from the floor, so we should do them the courtesy. Incubators try to teach and develop entrepreneurial skills and suggest that company growth can be planned. How much can growth be planned, structured, or are you sometimes at the mercy of being in the right market at the right time? Both.
COVID. So we grew organically and quickly to start with. And then we brought on, more managers and our operations manager who got us on a plan for growth. We actually started putting in metrics and understanding, what our profit margin was and where we wanted it to be. And then pre-COVID, we had a big plan for growth. And had a budget in place for years in advance, and we had a plan on how we're going to get there, and then COVID. So sometimes you are at the mercies of pandemics, or it could be something local, it could be a competitor, it could be anything that could be an illness, anything could come up. I think you still absolutely need to make those plans, but be able to pivot, be able to change what you're doing, which is a little bit like what we did. We had built up a bit of a cash reserve, which meant that we weren't panicked during COVID. We changed our strategy to a lot more of online. We knew that we had to put a lot of things on hold and not go for the growth that we were going to, and just see where things ended up. So I'd always say, plan for those growth, plan for those successes, but then just ride the whatever happens, ride it out.
Well, it's interesting you say plan for the success, because I took the opposite approach. I planned for failure. I started my business fairly soon after the GFC. And because I'm a services business, I deliberately set up in 3 completely different business sectors, so that if any sector suffered, I'd still have the other ones to fall back on. It was a good plan. Yeah. And I deliberately planned that at least one of them wasn't going to work. The problem was that all 3 completely took off. And so I suddenly found myself well stretched beyond my capacity to deliver. And I had to start taking on staff and whatnot much sooner than I had ever intended to. Good problem to have, but started with a plan for failure. So.
Interesting.
I mean, I agree. In some ways, I'm very pragmatic, and I like to plan. I like to make data-driven decisions. But at the other time, I like you, Michelle, I like to follow my gut, give something a crack. You're like, oh, you know what? I don't need the spreadsheet to tell me that this is going to work. I use my own calculation based on experience and what I've tried in the past and what hasn't worked to guide that. And I think it's kind of like, to answer the question, nothing exists in a vacuum. Sure, timing and circumstance can really help someone who's in the right place at the right time. However, if they don't have that preparation, that initiative, that drive, it doesn't, the opportunity will just sort of vanish. And taking COVID, for example, it affected a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And some businesses had to lay off staff and close completely, even with government support. But we had other startups like urban plant growers who they have some at home on your kitchen bench top hydroponic herb and plant growing kits. They had a decent Christmas, typical peak season in their sales. But then March, April, May, when everyone transitioned to working from home, their sales accelerated like wildfire. They have continued month-on-month growth and are now stocked in David Jones nationwide. So yes, they couldn't have planned for or predicted a global pandemic, but had they not set up their business to be able to scale once the opportunity presented itself, they would have taken it nowhere.
Yeah, I love those success stories. I've got a client who was selling craft supplies, and they had a nice little business. Then COVID hit, and their business just took off because everyone was suddenly starting to do craft at home. So
you're probably that in sourdough starters.
I've got some ugly pots that I made out of concrete, and lots of yeast from my focaccia phase.
Beautiful.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. This has been a really entertaining discussion. Now I'll read my closing spiel. Here we go. Tonight has been another event as part of the RACI Careers Development Program. Through webinars, networking events, mentoring, lectures and workshops, the RACI Careers Development Program aims to help graduating students and early career scientists get the best possible start in their careers. Our upcoming events include next week, the New South Wales ECCG is running a really interesting event on PhD Perspectives, Part 2. Camaraderie is the 3rd of June, first Thursday of every month. And of course, in June, we also have our intensive short course, careers short course and workshop for active job seekers. So if you know of anyone who's looking for work, that's a really helpful one for those. The recording of this event will be uploaded to the RACI Careers Development YouTube channel over the next few days, as well as to our careers site at raci.org.au. In the meantime, our thanks very much to Emma and Michelle for taking the time to be here tonight, and to our sponsors, Laboratory Credit Union, Envirolab and DCS Technical. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're all done.
Thanks, Dave. That was great.
Great conversation. Could have gone on.
Yeah, and look, I do hope that we stay in touch here, Emma. I'd love to collaborate with you. I'd love to be of service to the students in any way, you know, so I'll put you onto our mailing list and just let you know. Actually, you know what, the tip that I didn't give tonight, and which I give to every business owner, is think about when you're hiring, think about the talent pool that nobody else goes for. I make a deliberate effort to try and hire working mums. Because I can offer an incredibly flexible job. You know, it doesn't matter to me most of the time whether it's done at midday or midnight. I can vary the workloads, so, you know, school holidays come across or something like that, we can drop the workloads for the most part. And it means that I get access to a talent pool of dedicated, masterful people who are just so good at their jobs that a lot of employers have overlooked. That's
so great. You know, fantastic. We need more people like you. And I wish we didn't have to think like this.
You shouldn't have to tell people, it's obvious.
2021 and it's still, you know, we still need to be making extra effort to make sure everyone's pulled up and succeeding together. And unfortunately, the data's coming through that the 18 months or whatever it's been of COVID have set women back a decade, and we've got to fix that. So thank you for doing your part.
Good work, Dave.
Michelle, I'm just sorry, because I just did 4 Boosting Female Founder Grants applications, but I didn't do one with you because you're past the startup phase. So you don't really qualify for that one anymore. But Accelerating Commercialization is always sitting there waiting for you if you ever have a project that you're looking for some support for.
Oh, we will. What's luckily we've got Jeb his travel exemption and his US visa. And he will be flying out to the US in June. So restarting our conversations with our US counterparts and our partners and our clients over there. So we're really excited because we did put a lot of things on hold. And now we can start that back up again in person.
Are we doing that little 10K New South Wales export grant for you?
I saw that, yeah. I don't know if we're doing it.
Should I get Rod to give you a call?
Yeah, I think he emailed me and I said let's do it, but I don't think I've heard back from him since.
Right. Well, yeah, he'll be on.
But yeah, it's great. There's so many things out there that you know, are helpful, and I think a lot of people don't know about them enough.
Yeah.
It's been worlds of help for us to be able to get out there with the export marketing grant, with the research and development grant. Yeah, that's to be able to continue the work that we're doing and yeah, keep going into the US and to keep developing our products and new products has been really helpful.
Have you heard about the Innovation District's Challenge Match Grants?
No, what's that one?
I don't know that too much about them, but I think our science faculty through Deep Green Biotech Hub is one of the hubs that's supporting it. And it is R&D based in some way, but if you just Google Innovation District Challenges, it seems to be something that the government wants to continue to support. And it was a direct result of COVID impact and responding to economic recovery.
Okay, we'll definitely take a look at it.
Sizable money as well.
Yeah, we're just starting to expand now because my colleagues and I, we've only ever done the Export Market Development Grant and the R&D tax incentive, but we're just starting to expand into ones that are synergistic to what we already do. So Boosting Female Founders, Accelerating Commercialization, Modern Manufacturing Grant, just a couple of them to help better service our existing client base rather than to grow a new client base.
Can I ask, with the Boosting Female Founder Grant, did they modify the eligibility this round in terms of ownership? Because I know there were some less than excited women who are equal co-founder or equal shareholders.
Yeah, I know that one. Yeah, you still have to be 51%.
Yeah.
which to me, that's silly, right? Can't see why 50%, because as you say, it's going to be 2 co-founders and they've each got half.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
No.
You just need to change your shareholder agreement to take 1% over.
I got so lucky partnering up with Rod. We were virtually strangers when we first partnered up with each other, and we knew each other, we liked each other, but we'd hardly ever done stuff together. But I'm working with somebody who has the completely matched ethical framework to me, and that makes such a difference. So we both believe in doing business right, and that makes such a difference. So.
Emma, how did it go working with your sister?
It was the best and absolute worst. In some ways, we kind of have the same brain. So we would weirdly have this ESP thing where we would email each other or message each other a screenshot of exactly the same thing separately, simultaneously.
Yeah.
And then we were completely on track with what we thought. And even just with like fabric selection and colorways, we would separately come up with exactly the same color palette for a particular season. It was very strange. But then in other ways, we clashed, completely disagreed, and even things where I tried to be a little bit more pragmatic and document roles, responsibilities, and ultimate autonomy and accountability, that kind of goes out the window, because you're like, do I want to have a nice Christmas with my family? Or do I want to make sure that she filled in the tax return that she is supposed to?
Yeah.
So it's great and challenging at the same time. We'll see how it goes with my partner. Do you have any tips on that one?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've managed to survive a very long time, but it has been, up and down. I think we respect each other's skill sets. I mean, clinically, he's brilliant.
Well, Jeb's also a very strong personality. So
yeah, he is a very and he's a very, what they call like a yellow personality, very much the, this is the idea and let's just go and do it. And though I'm not, I'm more details than him. I'm not super analytical, but I'm more like the doer and the technical and the, get the tax return done and make sure everything on the list has been done correctly. And then, but if you put a list in front of him, he, throws it out the window. So yeah, it has been a massive challenge. It's been great to be able to share the whole journey with him. So it's in some ways, makes the relationship a lot stronger. But we've had to go through a lot of ups and downs to sort of get to where we are. Do I have any advice? No. Just patience and tolerance, and also being able to say, let's not be at work now. So it's dinner time now, or it's the school run with kids now, or it's a family lunch, Sunday lunch, and let's take the work hat off and put the mum and dad hat on, or let's put the husband and wife hat on, and just park that and try and compartmentalize the work side of things, which can be very difficult in any situation. But just being able to just put a pause on that when we need to has helped.
I will try to remember that. I'm pulling my hair out in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
For me, it's interesting because my wife and I have very different skill sets. I have a science degree and a business degree, and my wife has neither. But she has a fabulous mind, and she'll often question my decisions, and it's always remembering that I respect her opinion. So even if I have to try and find a way to explain it in non-scientific terms or in non-business terms, it's worth taking the trouble to do so, because she'll check me at every step and make sure that I'm not making a mistake or offer an insight that I hadn't thought about. She's also been incredibly valuable when it comes to the HR side of things, because I'm not always the best with people.
Yeah, you do just have to recognize each other's strengths. And yeah, and exactly explain. Sometimes, yeah, it'll be Jeb making a decision without explaining where he's coming from with that. And sometimes if that's what the other partner needs, like I said, well, why? You need to tell me why you want to do that, not just we're going to go off and do it. I need to understand the why, and then if he does slow down, take the time, go through his thought process, then I can, I'll be on board with it. But yes, sometimes it's just,
It's very interesting though. I mean, 3 weekends ago, I was trying to solve a complex scientific problem. And I said to my wife, Chantel, I said, just listen to me. And I'm going to walk through the steps, even though, she'd have no idea what the heck I'm talking about. I'm just going to walk through the steps. And she listened. And because I was trying to explain it to her, I had to think through like non-technically.
Yes.
And in the end, that as I took the trouble to explain it, I had an epiphany. And we might have just come up with something revolutionary.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. And all because I said, just listen to me and while I think out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that, having a sounding board who's there all the time can be amazingly valuable.
And has the patience to actually listen to your dumb ramble.
You both need and that's it. The key is just have the patience.
Yeah.
Life lessons, hey?
I think that works in whether you're a business partner with your partner or not. It's just patience.
It does help after 25 years of marriage that we still like each other.
That's impressive.
I'm actually going to go and cook some dinner and resist the urge to open my laptop after it.
No.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much.
Jeb's actually doing a webinar in the other room. So we've got a health professional webinar going on in one of the other rooms. I'm just going to go and check on him. Nice. And but we've got a good team in place that I handed over to, told them what needed to happen. So I'm just going to quickly see how that's all going. But
outstanding. Well, thank you so much, both. Now, I see there's a couple of people who've stuck around. If you want to put your hand up and ask me a question, like if you need me for something, Raphael, Melinda, Artie, or Amanda, guys, Emma and Michelle, you can take off, but just in case any of the attendees need me for something.
No problems.
Good night.
Well, thank you for that, Dave. Emma, lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you both. See you later.
Thank you.
See you later.